I mean, we need to talk about Elon Musk.
Yeah, that's how long have we been talking for now? We've been talking for 7 minutes, recorded, and the infamous Elon has not come up yet. But do you want to set the premise here, Tom? Because it was your idea, and I thought it was a good idea.
Yeah. Well, what I found with you is that
Where's this going?
This sounds ominous, doesn't it? That we seem to agree on everything, and to a certain extent, that's great. But I've always thought, well, Daniel's quite a spiky man. He
you know me too well, aren't you?
doesn't hold back. And then I happened to see a comment that you'd put on someone's post a couple of weeks ago.
It's on Anthony Clervy, right? CEO of Una. Yeah, that's it.
And you said something along the lines of, I don't understand why everyone has a go at Elon, kind of thing. And I thought, oh, here we go. Now,
we found something.
I found something that I fundamentally disagree on. I'm going to set the premise to say, and I'll then pass it over to you. I kind of don't care that he's a billionaire, or that he's ultra successful, or that he's got all these techniques to turn around businesses. It's that whole thing of when does the end justify the means? And for me, the means that I think he uses to carry out what he does are an absolute disgrace to humanity.
That's brutal. That's a very strong
There you go.
statement.
There you
wow.
go.
I wasn't expecting...
To you, Daniel.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I've been thinking about this, and actually, after this episode of recording, Tom, I will actually send you a podcast that is on the Lex Friedman podcast. It's super useful, and I'll get into the point. But they mentioned Elon on there, and I've forgotten the guy's name, but he's a billionaire, right? Who was being interviewed on there. And I'm not sure why Elon came up, but obviously because Twitter has been spoken about pretty much everywhere, hence whilst we're kind of having this conversation today. And this guy gave a really good argument on Elon, right? And about, have you heard of an approach called still manning?
No.
So effectively, so when you have a debate, it takes the strongest possible argument of the other side, and you extrapolate as much as you can from that. And so he did this, and effectively it was like the way Elon talks to people, the way he works with people, the way he forces them to work incredible hours. And I say incredible lightly there. Maybe it's awful hours. His demeanor with certain people, the way he kind of, maybe bully isn't the right way, but the way he like barges through and gets things done, it can be seen as disgraceful. So he acknowledges like all of those flaws, but then he'll go on to the positive, like maybe not the positives, but the other side. And he just gave a really good view, and something, and it kind of aligned to where I stand there, in that, you know, there's 8 billion people on a planet, and there's probably, out of those 8 billion, there's probably like 50 Elon type characters. So if we use him as like the focus here, there's probably only 49 other people on our planet at this time that are like him. And there may be more, but there's only probably another 49 that are doing things to that level or below it. So he's probably the highest there. And they were saying it's probably an incredibly lonely place for him to be in. And I actually watched this, and I'm going to bounce between two things here. I watched this YouTube short of Elon yesterday. It just came up on my feed, maybe because I'm a Elon fanboy in some ways. And he was talking about his vision, and effectively the only thing he cares about in his life, aside from his family, which he doesn't get to see very much, although he does bring them everywhere with him, is that he wants to create a starfaring citizens of the solar system. And that is fundamentally that's his main focus, right? Every single time. And when you have a goal that's so, it's like that hairy, was it the hairy audacious goal? I've forgotten the acronym, but it's like a goal that no one else has ever had. You almost have to use means that no one else is ever using to even get close to it. And the truth is, like, he has almost done it, right? And there will be people that disagree with that, don't work with that, don't like that. But at the same time, there will be those who really vibe with that vision and that goal, and they will be prepared to almost give everything. And I think that's where he appeals to, is that pocket of people. But yeah, go, because I've been talking too long.
You've described a successful method, yeah? But you've not given me anything within that argument that says he's a fundamentally decent human being. Now, you might say, well, why does that matter? But I'd say there has to be ultimately wider principles in life than just making money. And don't get me wrong, I'm pro kind of capitalism in general. But when it's to the extent that it creates human suffering or inequality or promotes dangerous thinking, then I think we have to look beyond the making money side. So I totally get that what he does is clever. It might even been seen as genius, but there's been plenty of historical geniuses who have been ultimately flawed and dangerous personalities. And then the other thing I just wanted to throw back and want to consider is, I fundamentally believe that the concept of a billionaire is unethical. And I don't mean that from any kind of purely senseless point. Yeah. Now, the closest you can get to an ethical billionaire is probably someone like Bill Gates, who we at least know is doing everything he can to be philanthropic with his money. But my point here is that with all of the world suffering, with all of the world inequality, there is absolutely no reason for so much money to be tied up with one man. And ultimately, that's where I think capitalism goes too far. And I promise you, I'm not approaching this as some kind of raging socialist. I'm pointing at
you loony lefties coming up.
Yeah, not at all, Daniel. But there's a point where everything goes too far, and that's where I think when you get that billionaire point, you kind of think, well, is this any longer justified?
Sure. I think I do think it's an interesting point, because people, but with billionaires, will often say, there's so many problems in the world, and they're solving these very niche problems, like Bill Gates, software, computers. Yeah. Do we really need any more developments there? Yeah, and you could do that with any billionaire. But I think almost without those little pockets of what they're doing, we don't get the developments elsewhere, right? If we don't have crazy computing power, hardware, software, we can't do our like day-to-day jobs, right? Like if you use Bill Gates as an example, like Microsoft Excel, which is my absolute worst Excel, piece of software. Oh man. But like it's literally changed the world, and it looks so minor. And then with like, in terms of why do we need people to have so much money? And for anyone listening, because I appreciate Tom and I are on video, he just held up an Excel 2019 Bible, I think it says.
One of my favorite.
Our video's a little bit blurred on the actual call, but I'm almost more concerned about that than anything else that Tom said.
Carry on, Daniel. Carry on.
In terms of the billionaire status, one thing it enables is huge amounts of growth very quickly. I think one thing that Elon, of course, he spends money, right? But just recently, it may have been this year, he just effectively sold off every property he's ever owned, and effectively lives in mostly his offices, or shares rooms with his friends now, or just has like a small place with his family. So he effectively spent a bit of the money that he's been earning, and rightly so, and then gave it all away because he's like, effectively that didn't align with his ultimate vision. But you just need huge amounts of capital to do incredible things. And I think that's, though we were just talking about VC-backed companies, I won't mention any of the detail there before we jumped on the call. And you can take like a very basic piece of software, and it literally needs hundreds of millions of pounds of backing just for people to code. And when you exacerbate that to manufacturing global supply chains, they effectively, Tom, like one really cool thing I picked up in the Ashley Vance book on Elon was that Elon's a supply chain genius, and all of his suppliers were underperforming. He sorted all of them out in person, like literally just flew to their factories, helped them better improve their manufacturing. but then started building the in-house capabilities as well to replace those as a resilience perspective. But when you're doing all of these things, that's an insane amount of capital alone. So I think the argument could still be made though, like, do we really need to go to space? That there's always that argument. Do we need to do these things? Do we need to go to Mars? Do we need to have colonies in space? My simple answer, based on what we're seeing in Russia and Ukraine, the threat of nuclear missiles over the last 50 years, is that we might need a plan B at some point. And I'm not saying plan B won't get wiped out, but having that contingency point is something that I really like. And also, is it enough just to be concerned about problems on our planet? It's almost nice to have something to aspire to. And I know not everyone would aspire to, like, oh, it's cool to have spaceships flying around. But like for me, it's like one of the coolest things ever. I would love to see that. So yeah, that's kind of my thoughts there on the billionaire status.
Yeah, no, well argued. And I get that it takes a lot of capital to what he does. I get that he has a very, very clever way of solving supply chain issues. I get that he's good at business. I think where it fundamentally comes down
on the personal side.
It's the personal side.
I'm just going to share one story, just real quickly. And it's in this podcast with this other billionaire, right? And Elon brought a new product out or something, like an aftershave. Didn't know about this. No idea. And this guy brought it and just messaged him saying, I've just brought that. And it effectively, he just sent back like a smiley face emoji. And like, from someone who's so busy, he effectively was saying, like, there's these little moments that people don't see in the public. They just see all the bad stuff. But at the heart of it, like, there is this guy who fundamentally cares about people that are maybe more aligned to his way of working. And I think it is sometimes difficult to get aligned to that way of working, and vice versa, right? It's very hard to be friendly or nice to people that completely disagree with your view when you're working in an environment. But there are moments that maybe we don't see portrayed because of the way in which media is published.
But what's ultimately the point of making money? It's to advance, I guess.
Oh, that's a bold question there, Tom.
Yeah.
That'd be different, won't it, for everyone in some ways?
Because there's a hierarchy of needs. It's like the Maslow's model.
Is it Maslow or Laszlo? It's Maslow, isn't it?
I think it's Maslow. I forget now.
For some reason, Laszlo came to my mind. I was like, no, that's not right.
It's Maslow.
Maslow's.
And for the likes of you and me, we just want to make sure that we can raise a comfortable environment for our family and ultimately do what we want to do. I guess there's a longer term view in terms of we want that freedom. Yeah. Whereas I feel like for Elon Musk and what he does, he creates such misery amongst his people, his staff. Just look at what's happened at Twitter recently, and I
really want to talk about this, by the way.
Demeaning messages to his people and to Twitter that you kind of think, well, actually, he's kind of lost the point and lost the plot here. Because, do you know what? I'm sure that somehow he will convert Twitter into making money. I'm sure of that. The facts will speak for themselves. At some point, Twitter will start making money again. Yeah. But you kind of think, at what cost and
sure.
Why?
No, keep going.
My final point, I worry about this whole, freedom of speech thing. I believe in the freedom to be able to express different views, but when that speech becomes dangerous and potentially insightful and potentially hurtful, then I think we have gone too far, and that's almost a replication of what's going on in society at the moment. So allowing Donald Trump back onto the platform, do you know what? I do believe that all sides of the political spectrum should be given a voice, but when you think about what actually happened and some of the things that Donald Trump was putting on Twitter, they were hurtful, they were insightful, they were at times racist, and at what point do you say, no, enough is enough?
Yeah. I was actually, this might sound weird, Tom. I was actually thinking about this in the shower this morning, the freedom of speech part, because it's such a difficult point to argue in some ways, right? Like it can be so polarizing. And I find, like, when I was studying law, we used to go into really deep theoretical, practical conversations. I have books on like the rule of law and all sorts that I consumed over the years. And I'm so pro freedom of speech to the point where, like, to almost even dangerous speech. Almost, it's such a like anything like. You should be able to say what you want, effectively, but there are consequences, both good and bad. And if the consequences are that you've broken the law, you've done something illegal, then you should have trust in the judicial system that there will be the right consequences will occur. However, that doesn't always happen, right? The legal system, the judicial system, doesn't always work across the globe. And then when you add loads of different jurisdictions, different people, different political spectrums, it's just a mess. So fundamentally, I just stick to that view, and I probably won't say anything else on that.
No, that's okay.
Because it's almost we'd need a day just to talk through all of that. But I completely, like, I think largely align with you on that. And then Twitter, just one, like, a couple of observations I have from that. Twitter is a startup, effectively, despite it being around forever. It's not profitable. It's a huge loss-making venture at present. It's effectively just backed up by VCs. It doesn't have a product that it's okay, but the product doesn't make money. So is it a good product? Maybe not. And so what's Elon's view? Effectively, the news have effectively been saying, how's Twitter going to operate? He's lost thousands of his staff. He gave them an ultimatum to effectively pledge allegiance to his new mantra of working long hours, which effectively is how Tesla and SpaceX and every other company he owns operates. And like, the pure intention of him there was to get rid of everyone who wouldn't be part of that culture. So effectively, there's been a culture shift overnight. So everyone that will stay there now will largely, like, to your point, make a profitable business because they are completely aligned, and anyone who isn't aligned is already gone. So he's just culled his workforce without having to do a redundancy program. And, like, appreciate that there's lots of different laws and lots of different jurisdictions around how you handle that.
But then that comes back to the point, Daniel. I don't disagree. Multi-billionaire, like, he can afford to do things right by his employees. He doesn't care about people. He just cares about making that company successful for his own ego.
I'm not sure, like, if we're going to see, like, any settlements, right? Like, nothing's come out around that, but we might just see, like, I wouldn't be unsurprised either way, right? But I would also argue that things like this happen every day on a smaller scale, and it's only because. And I'm not using that as a justification, but I think there's something to be mindful of, right? Like, I've seen it in practice happen, and it's been incredibly toxic.
Yeah, what Elon's doing it is on an extreme, a very public and a very kind of grand
because it's
scale. Because it's Elon. You know, I'd give Elon Musk a lot more credit if we ever heard about anyone who ever works for him. So if he was ever kind of making a point about, I'd like to thank so-and-so, my chief operating officer, for a great job he's done. The whole thing is a venture fueled by his own ego. Now, I understand.
You need to read the book that Ashley Vance did. Seriously, I'm not saying your opinion would be completely changed. But she speaks to people that hate him and love him, and even people that he loved until they did one thing and he got rid of them. Like 10 years of friendship, and he's very brutal. I can either say cold, brutal, black and white. Like, if it doesn't matter how good our relationship is, if you didn't meet the standards, you're out. But like that book changed my view, because effectively I had similar views. I thought he was a great man, but incredibly effectively the things that you were saying, and my view was significantly swayed after listening to so many different perspectives.
They always say, don't they, to truly learn and to truly understand, you should listen to different perspectives and read different perspectives. So I will do that. I think that generally there's an opinion of the man which has been kind of almost positively swayed by the fact that obviously he was so fundamental in building Tesla. And then obviously when you think about that alongside the huge climate crisis we've got at the moment, and you can think, well, this guy's revolutionary, he's going to help save the planet. But I don't believe that that's ever been his goal. I think his goal has always been
really
to fuel. Yeah, I think this is all an ego play.
I fundamentally, like, I don't see how. There's no way anyone chasing money would be, say, willing to work 26 hours a day. And I'm using that on purpose. I appreciate. For anyone listening or watching, I know there's 24 hours in a day. Like, please don't correct me there. So I think you do need to have that higher goal. And when you listen to him, the only thing he's a bit all over the place when he talks. He's like really awkward on his interviews. But one thing he'll always mention is about getting people into space, colonizing space. And at the same time, all the advantages that would do. And like same with Tesla, right? He was so fundamentally driven to make a clean energy play. And the cars weren't almost the foundation of that. It's almost the solar panels and the battery packs were actually, they're actually like a fundamental part of Tesla as opposed to the cars, like the solar panels you can stick on your roof. All I say is, read Ashley Vance's book, Tom. And then if you're cool to have a catch up. Should we?
I'll have a catch up. I might have changed my views, but I still probably won't accept that is a decent person. I think all the arguments you've made, Daniel, are really interesting because they're all aligned to the idea that he's a genius, he's a visionary, he's a hard worker, he's successful. But I think I'll come back to my opening statement. At what point is it acceptable for the end to justify the means? And I think the means by which he goes about things are just fundamentally misaligned to my values, and I think potentially dangerous to humans that interact with him. And that's the bit that I worry about. And then if you couple that with the idea that he's got billions of pounds, he could do so much more with that money that would help make the lives of the people that come across him or that work for him a lot easier. He doesn't, because his one goal is to make more money. And I think that's where it's capitalism comes too far.
I do think, I mean, if you work with him, you're well compensated, right? Like you are going to be, you're going to be in the top 5 to 1%. And I exclude the 1 to 0% because that's ridiculous wealth. No, like, maybe it's an insight into our wider views of our managerial styles. I'm not sure if mine
definitely. I don't want to work for you, Daniel. I don't want to work for you.
You speak to someone on my old team, they'll let you know how I am. Just some closing remarks, Tom. I was just thinking, like, how do we bring this back to like procurement teams? And fundamentally, I think it comes back to like one point I always think is about we all have the freedom of choice as to who we work for and where we work, and that's why I not downplayed those points, but fundamentally, like, that's why I think it's so important that you take control of your procurement career, your career in general, right? Like, if you get that when you're talking to a manager or you're with a business and they don't align to you, that's a very good sign to get out. And like, if you get out, you're probably making way for someone to come in who is going to align. Like, I've done it numerous times in the past. Like, I've worked somewhere, it aligned for a period of time. Maybe my views changed, maybe the business changed, something changed. And I was like, hey, this no longer works for me. And that's kind of what I think we're seeing play out at Twitter at a very large scale. And effectively that choice is being pushed, though, from the CEO down as opposed to employee up. Although actually I think it's probably both. But that's just kind of my closing remarks there. I don't think you've swayed me just yet. I didn't expect to be swayed and vice versa on this.
No,
I think it's a good conversation.
It's great that we have got different views. If I could just add to the point.
Go.
I've worked in a position, it was fairly recently actually, without giving details, where I knew that...
Look on his LinkedIn.
My views were not fundamentally aligned to the way the procurement team was being used by the business, shall we say. It got to the stage where I thought that I'm actually now compromising my professional integrity by continuing to work here. So there was a definite point where I said, do you know what values do I have that are more important to me than earning money in the place that I worked. And that was the tipping point for me. I felt hugely liberated and far happier once I got out of that environment. And unfortunately, I'm in a situation currently where I'm building the team and building a procurement environment in exactly the way that I want it to be shaped. But I think, back to your point, it's really important that all of us, whether you're leading a team, whether you're in a team, you think about, right, what are the procurement values that we hold dear to our hearts, and where do we think that we want to work to make sure that we are able to deliver on those? Because if not, you're not in alignment and you're not happy and you're not going to be successful.
Yeah, completely agree, Tom. We're out of time, aren't we? Because these sessions go pretty fast, but it was a great conversation there for sure.
Brilliant.